Okay, guys, so during the unit that is coming up, we are going to be looking at three theories that some famous philosophers have come up with in terms of approaching decisions about right and wrong, making sense of moral matters. As we will see, there are going to be different kinds of claims made by the philosophers. So, not only in terms of premises and conclusions, moral statements and non moral statements, but we're also going to see claims that can be categorized as metaphysical and epistemological, and furthermore, within ethics, as metaethical, normative, and applied. To make sure that you can spot the philosophers when they're doing this in your reading assignments, and to make sure you can follow me in my lecture, I need to do just a short, tiny little lesson that goes more in depth to some terminology that you were introduced to when you did your first ebook reading when you were introduced to ethics. So some of what you see is going to be familiar. I do have a slightly different way of defining some of the things that were introduced to you in the ebook. Make sure that you're making use of the definitions of the diagram that I give you here. With that said, let's go ahead and get started. So you should have downloaded this document here, and as part of your grade for this task, you are going to submit your markup of this. This is not an argument markup, it's more like notes. Now, I don't want you to have to rewrite all of this. If you want, you can download this. I posted this as both a PDF and as a Word document. If you like, you can just download this as a work document. Wherever you see me putting a triangle over a word or set of words that name fundamental and powerful concepts, you can just highlight that in yellow. How about yellow? Highlight the words, any words that I put triangles over, you put highlight, and then you can just upload that document so that you don't have to retype it. So those are your two options. I prefer to write. It's more of the teaching experience for me to write here instead of just, having stuff already typed or in a PowerPoint, So if you prefer to type out the document and then handwrite on it for ease of referral, you can do that. And you will find this useful. So make sure you keep this document, this lesson handy. I'll probably have a review question or some review questions based on this lesson during week 7. In a Blackboard created review. So keep that in mind as well. You will need to access specific information in this in the future. All right, so this document, as you can see, is called Some Branches of Philosophy. And you already have an initial introduction, but I'm going to give you a more precise, more thorough description of some branches that you read about. It won't be as thorough as you would get in my general survey course on philosophy, but I'll give you just a little bit more than you have. So as you know, logic is a branch of philosophy. So you can see the word branch right there, right? So it's a branch of philosophy that focuses on what? The evaluation of arguments. So logic is a branch of philosophy. Philosophy itself, that word names a discipline. So a subject. All right. So the main concern of logic is arguments. It is concerned with developing methods for evaluating whether the reasons in a given argument adequately, so of course we've got reasons here, adequately support its conclusion. So these are words that name key concepts of concern to logicians. And so as you can see, we've been engaged with the branch of logic to the extent that we've been learning to construct, analyze arguments. This branch of philosophy contributes to the dialogue on the correct principles of reasoning and what makes for flawed reasoning. So not all reasoning is good. So one reason why we want to learn to construct arguments and study logic and philosophy is to learn to construct good arguments that have good reasoning in support of a conclusion. Of course, we also analyze arguments, and when we analyze them and we clarify them, when we format them, we see what the premises or conclusions are using intellectual empathy, then we're in a better position to evaluate them. All right, those who focus on the concept of argument are called logicians. So you should either have drawn a triangle 6 times. Remember, triangles are my visual representation of when I'm highlighting a major concept or fundamental concept within some thought or thinking or something. But if you're not wanting to rewrite this by hand into triangles, then you're welcome to use a downloaded version, the Word version, and highlight in yellow the words that I have triangles over. All right, so metaphysics. Okay. So a lot of the times I'm going to be, in future lectures, I might say, well, this is a metaphysical presupposition. This is a metaphysical claim. What is the metaphysical question that arises? For you to understand what I mean by that question, let's get a little bit more into detail about metaphysics. So metaphysics is another branch of philosophy that focuses on reality. So when it comes to the core concepts, they are the ones that are in bold. So these are words they name fundamental or the fundamental, the most fundamental and most powerful concept of concern with respect to that branch. So for metaphysics, it's reality. Now let's note some other concepts that fall under the broader concept, the more fundamental concept of reality. This branch is concerned with being, what is, what exists, or existence. This branch of inquiry is also concerned with how various kinds of substances, entities, things, and events in the universe are related, connected to each other. This includes a focus on the nature of things, and when we read this together in class, students always say causality. It's just the way our brains work when reading, but it says causality. So terms of thinking, think in terms of cause and effect. People who do metaphysics are called metaphysicians. Okay? If you are doing this in the Word document, don't worry about the squares or the arrows. You don't need to do that. We're just concerned about the triangles for grade. Epistemology, that's another branch. This branch of philosophy focuses on the nature, scope, and limits of knowledge. So this is the core concept. This is the most important concept for epistemologists. It is especially interested in the conditions, so like requirements of knowledge, and what separates belief or mere opinion from knowledge. So there it is again. This includes an interested in truth. Other topics of relevance to this branch include perception, reliability, certainty, and doubt. Those who do work in this branch are called epistemologists. And then finally, ethics. So this, of course, is the focus of our class. Okay, so the focus of philosophy 2306. So that means that while we do want to learn to approach arguments and reasoning and thinking like a logician, because this is a philosophy class, our focus is primarily on, or ultimately about ethics, the branch of ethics. However, you will see when we're learning about the theories, when you're analyzing your own arguments, and when we get to the last unit that has to do with civil protest, that we do take note of metaphysical and epistemological assumptions that inform the thinking, not only of the theorists, the philosophers, and their theories, but also our own thinking and how we interpret and make sense of contemporary moral problems like George Floyd killing and the aftermath. So ethics is a branch that focuses on morality, that is, beliefs about right and wrong, good and bad, or evil. It is interested in the origins of morality and the constructions of principles and values that we can use to make decisions about matters of moral significance. What we should or ought to do, that is what we should or ought to do or not to do, and C, the application of ethical theory to contemporary moral problems. Those who do work in this branch of philosophy are called ethicists. All right, so something that you do need to submit to me by hand is a diagram. So we're going to create a diagram, and again, you will submit this to me. So this cannot be on a Word document. This has to be handwritten. So up here, I would like for you to write the word and structure your diagram the way that I do. So at the very top, in small letters or capital letters, but not too big, so look at how big my letters are compared to the rest of this paper, we have the word philosophy. Okay. This is row 1, and it names a discipline. the discipline of this course, like a subject. Okay. Then, as we noted, we noted 4 of its branches. So logic, metaphysics. So you're copying, so you're going to replicate this in your own handwriting, epistemology, and of course, ethics. All right, so this is row 2, so write that down. These words right here, they name branches. So branches of the discipline. Okay. Now, underneath each of the names for the branches, and make sure you're using straight rows. This shouldn't be all over the place, so straight rows. So now we're going to do a triangle. So do kind of a big triangle, and we're going to write the word that names the most fundamental and powerful concept for that branch. So in here we're going to write what? Argument. Inside this one, we're going to write what word? Reality. In this one, we're going to write knowledge. I think my pen's running out. In this one, this might come out blue. Let's find out what color we're going to get. Oh yeah, it's black. In ethics, we're going to put morality. Okay. So over here, put row 3, core concepts. You could also put the most important concepts, the most important, fundamental, and powerful concepts of each branch. Okay. Now, there are different fields and divisions within logic, metaphysics, and epistemology, but this diagram in conjunction with these descriptions will be enough to get you through this course. If you want to learn more about the philosophical study of this and this, take a survey course, Philosophy 1301. If you want to take my course, we use COVID-19 to do this, but we also have a section on ethics, so this class will prime you for a major unit in the survey course. All right, so we need to add just a little bit more detail, and then this lecture will be done. So here, we're going to write 3 things. We're going to record 3 fields. So row 4, over here, write row 4, fields within a branch. Okay, so you might want to do this arrow way out here. So this is row 4. So over here, we're going to write the word meta-ethics. Over here, we're going to write the word normative ethics. And over here, I didn't quite space this correctly. I haven't done this in a while. Applied ethics. Since January. And now we're going to write just a short description underneath each one of these, and then we'll be done. Okay, so I really wish I'd spaced this out better, but I didn't, so I'll just make do. But make sure that you understand, let's do arrows, okay? Make sure you understand that these 3 words go with the branch of ethics. I know that this is reaching out under here, but this is not, these are not fields of epistemology, metaphysics, or logic. They're fields associated with ethics, and it's concerned with morality. Okay, so meta-ethics is concerned with... Okay, so let's go ahead and resume. So meta-ethics is concerned with the origin of morality. So whenever I say morality, you can just think right and wrong, good or bad, evil. And the meaning of moral terms / concepts. Normative ethics is focused on an attempt to establish, it's supposed to be a B, establish a moral rules / principles. Sometimes they're focused or they discover only one moral rule or principle that we can apply to lots of different things, or they focus on establishing or claim to have established that there are a set of moral rules that they have discovered. So establish moral rules, principles, or values that we are rationally compelled to use in evaluating past, present, and future decisions, choices, actions, behaviors. I really wish I'd left a lot more room for this part right here, but oh well. Okay, so I'm just going to go over this line a little bit. Okay, so applied ethics involves the use of critical thinking to apply moral concepts. So this isn't supposed to be here, right? If I had enough room, that wouldn't be there. So I'm going to draw a line to indicate that that should not be there. Moral concepts, rules, principles, values to real life choices, decisions, choices, actions, behaviors. Okay, this includes, and we should say of moral significance. And of course, this includes contemporary moral problems, hot topic issues. So just one last thing that I want to note is that we have, okay, so we've got the name of the discipline. We've got 4 branches, 4 typical main core branches of the discipline of philosophy. We have studied a bit of logic because in doing philosophy, we need to be able to think like philosophers and approach issues of morality rationally. We're also going to be bringing up and excavating your metaphysical and epistemological assumptions about right and wrong, George Floyd, the killing, and the aftermath, as well as the metaphysical and epistemology assumptions and claims made by our theorists, our philosophers. And of course, we will be doing all of this within the branch in the context of a course that focuses on ethics. I don't really focus on meta-ethics in an introductory course to ethics. If you want, you can read, I believe it is chapter 2, where the author talks about relativism, subjective relativism, and nihilism. You can look at that. That's a little bit of meta-ethics, a little bit of normative ethics, but I'm not going to focus on that in this class. Instead, we focus on this part right here. We focus on normative ethics and applied ethics, but we do bring up, as we go along, any meta-ethical presuppositions and claims. And of course, going back to here, we will be bringing up any metaphysical and epistemological assumptions and questions that are relevant to thinking about matters of morality, like an ethicist. So everything that I just said, you should write down because you're probably going to need to know it for a future assignment. So let me just give you one example of how these things connect. All of these connect. So let's say you say killing George Floyd is wrong. Maybe you say it's wrong, and that is your particular moral judgment within applied ethics about a contemporary moral problem about an action or behavior that a particular person engaged in. If I was to ask you why you thought it was wrong, then you might appeal to your normative ethics. Normative ethics is what gives us our general moral principles. So here you might want to write down in brackets that this is where we, the philosophers construct or discover, some would say, general moral principles or values, moral values, okay? So that's the business of normative ethics. Applied ethics, right, has you thinking through the application of GMPs, I'm going to say GMPs, V, so general moral principles or general moral values, to real life. That is, our real life, including contemporary moral issues. Okay, so you say the killing of George Floyd is wrong. That's a statement that we make a particular moral judgment, right? So we might say to derive particular moral judgments. Okay. So then I ask, well, so you say the killing of George Floyd is wrong. That's your particular moral judgment. It is made in the context of applied ethics. Then I say why. So in telling me why, you're probably in part going to give me at least one moral statement in normative ethics. Not all of you did that in your argument constructions. But you might say killing is wrong. Say, oh, okay, so your killing is wrong. Well, what makes you think that that is true? So in doing that, then you start to work between something called meta-ethics and normative ethics. So you might tell me how you justify the claim that killing is wrong. Why should I believe that killing is always wrong? So then you might say, well, the meaning of wrong is always determined by the 10 Commandments. Oh, okay, so your meta-ethics. So the meaning of moral terms is determined by the source. Then I might say, well, why should I believe that the meaning of wrong and right is determined by the 10 Commandments? So then what we might do is we might then expose some of your metaphysical and epistemological assumptions. You might say, well, because God created the 10 Commandments. That has a metaphysical presupposition in it. In other words, the word God is a being the word God refers to something truly existing, a being that really exists in reality. That's a metaphysical assumption that we've unpacked. Furthermore, you might say God used divine inspiration to get a human being to write the commandment, killing is wrong, or thou shalt not kill. Oh, another metaphysical presupposition, that there's a being called God that has causal powers to make or move a human being to do something. And then you might claim that God has given us the 10 Commandments as a source of truth. In other words, you might say we should believe the 10 Commandments because it is a reliable source. Well, why is it reliable? Because it tells us true things. It tells us what the correct morality is. So again, that's an epistemological assumption. And really, I should have worked through my example back the other way. I should have said, why should I believe the 10 Commandments? And you might say, why should I endorse that? You might say, well, because it's the word of God. No, yes, I could have done that. And I said, oh, and then the epistemological assumption would be that God only reveals true things to us, or that the 10 Commandments are a reliable source of moral truth. That's an epistemological assumption that's connected to a metaphysical assumption about God being a truly existing being that can create reliable sources of true belief, correct knowledge, if you will. So hopefully you've seen through that example why we might want to have a little bit more familiarity with all of this, because we'll be exposing these kinds of connections within the theories of the philosophers and what they come up with, as well as your own thinking, as well as the thinking of our peers.